Welcome to the A-List. I'm Anthony Landahl. Here with me today is Dr. Shannon, CEO of Cook County Health and Hospital System. Welcome to the show.
Morning, Anthony.
When we think of hospitals, we usually think of them as medical institutions, but they are also businesses, and you play a big part in that, isn't that right?
Yes, I'm the CEO of the health system, and to your point, our health system actually includes 2 hospitals, about 20 community-based health centers of various size, and we have about 6,500 employees and a budget of about $1.5 billion. So aside from delivering health care, you're right, it's a big part of the local economy.
So as a CEO, what do you do exactly? What's your day-to-day assignments?
Well, I don't have assignments as much as I give assignments as the CEO. So a big part of my job as the CEO is really a couple of things. The first is to make sure that I assemble a team of executives who can help the health system achieve its goals. The second thing that I have to do is I am the communicator in chief. So I'm the public face of the health system, and that means interacting a lot with elected officials, with other healthcare agencies, and so on.
So you've had experience in the medical industry in the past. What field did you exactly specialize in?
So I've been a physician for 30 years, and my field of specialty is internal medicine, which we describe as being healthcare for adults. I have further specialty training in pulmonary and critical care medicine, so that's diseases of the lungs, and critical care medicine, which is self-evident. It's taking care of people in acute, high-risk conditions.
So what prompted you to go into the medical industry?
Well, the medical, I like to think of it as the medical field, more than the industry per se. But I think it really comes from the usual thing. Most doctors, if you scratch the surface, it's usually a combination of a couple of pieces. One is that we interact with patients and individuals all the time, and so the whole idea of helping people to live better and healthier lives. And the second thing is I was always fascinated with science, with the body, with physiology. And so if you like doing that kind of thing, becoming a doctor or becoming a nurse are very natural kind of things to go into.
And so you were raised around in the area, so what high school did you go to?
I went to St. Ignatius College Prep downtown, but I grew up in LaGrange, and half my family went to Lyons Township. I hope that doesn't get me into trouble with RB fans. And half my family went to private Catholic schools.
So where did you go to college thereafter?
I went to a small Jesuit college in Mobile, Alabama called Spring Hill.
And so did you, is college where you decided to enter the field of medicine?
Yeah, usually, you get an inkling about these kinds of things when you're in high school, but in college, once you pick your discipline, I decided to major in biology down there. It also gave me an opportunity while I was in college to test my interest in those things because I had my first jobs working in hospitals when I was in college. I worked as a clerk, I worked as an orderly, I worked as a phlebotomist, which is the unpleasant fellow who comes to draw your blood in the hospital.
So how does one move from being, as you said, you were a pulmonologist, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you move from being a pulmonologist to a CEO?
You usually get kicked in that direction.
So
in my case, I was running a division of the Department of Medicine at the old Cook County Hospital. And I was approached by a person who I had a lot of admiration for at the health center where I trained in Dallas. This is Parkland Hospital. It's the big public safety net system down there. And I was approached by him to take a career diversion to become an executive leader on his healthcare team. That was to become his chief medical officer. The chief medical officer is really a role in an organization, most sizable health systems. It's the role of the person who intersects between the health system's executive team and the medical staff of the hospital. And the medical staff is the group that's delivering the majority of the health care. It's also the group that's most responsible for delivering on quality and safety matters in the health system. So in 2007, I was asked to come down and interview for that position, and it was something I ended up doing for 5 years in Dallas before returning to Chicago in 2012.
So how did the stars align and you received this head job of CEO?
Well, that's a peculiar story. It was not something that I thought I was going to be doing. When I rejoined Cook County in 2013, I was really operating to integrate the system. My title at that time was the Chief of Clinical Integration. We were trying to integrate the various parts of the health system that we have today. And within a year of taking that position, my direct supervisor was the Chief Executive Officer. He, in fact, was recruited to run the New York Health and Hospital System. And at the time that he made that decision to go to New York, our governing board asked me to serve as the interim Chief Executive Officer and subsequently asked me to interview for the role of CEO. So I've now been the CEO for about 3 years. I wouldn't say it was accidental, but it was not something that I thought I would be doing today.
So does this job, you've come from a medical education, does this job require a large knowledge in business? Do you need to be a bit, do you have to have a degree in business?
You know, you have to have enough aptitude to get the general sense of things. There are certainly many healthcare systems of the size of mine that are run by physicians. Some of those physicians knew that they wanted to do that work, and because the economics of healthcare are so important, they decided that getting a master's in business administration was a key piece of their personal development. I've taken a somewhat different route. My route from a clinical role and a quality and safety role didn't give me that same business background, but it did give me an appreciation for the business aspect. And so what I've chosen to do rather is to populate my executive team with individuals who have both responsibilities and experience around the business side of healthcare. They inform me, they come to me with their different experiences, but ultimately I take information from a lot of different directions to help make good decisions for the institution. And on top of that, I have a health system board. And on my board, which is 11 members that are nominated to those positions, those individuals bring a tremendous amount of business sense, and they reflect that to me as well.
So it's not a single person job, you're surrounded by a team of
That's
helpful
right.
people. So when it comes to past CEOs, are you the only one with prior medical history, or has there been other CEOs who were doctors before, or were there CEOs who were just businessmen before?
Yeah, I would say that the modern health system and the period of the last generation, the last 25 years or so, it's been about equally split between civilian and physician leaders of the health system.
All right. So Cook County Health System is a public hospital. What exactly does a public hospital mean?
Well, what it means literally is a couple of pieces. First of all, for sure, by definition, it's a not-for-profit. The other piece is that it is owned by the county government of Cook County. So Cook County Health and Hospital System is at its core a subunit of Cook County government. The other thing that it means, though, is that most of the time, if you look across this country in large urban areas, many of them have a public safety net system. And the reason that they're called safety net systems is that until the Affordable Care Act, we had such a high proportion of people who were uninsured that those individuals who are typically often residents of large urban areas like Chicago, New York, Miami, LA, those kinds of places, they relied on there being something like my health system. My health system has been around for about 180 years. It started as a so-called almshouse, and an almshouse in history is a creation of the 19th century. These were places where poor people went for care. Oftentimes it was care that they were getting as they were dying. But as healthcare progressed and as the understanding of modern medicine progressed, they became places of hope and cure for individuals. But again, very early on, the separation in this country between the haves and the have-nots, public healthcare systems often were the place that the so-called have-nots turned to, immigrants and so on.
And you also are associated with the Cook County Prison, isn't that right?
Well, the Cook County president presides over the 17 elected officials, the county commissioners in Cook. And those individuals help to provide guidance and oversight to the health system. They also give us a significant amount of operating revenues for the healthcare system. So for instance, this year, we will get about $111 million in support to our operating expenses from the county's coffers. And that helps to make things go, particularly for the services that my health system provides that we can't get insurance reimbursement for. Those two areas are public health. We run the public health function for suburban Cook County. And secondly, correctional health. We provide health care services for detainees at the Cook County Jail and at the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center.
So what are some challenges a public hospital faces versus a private hospital?
Well, I'd say that the first one is there's never enough money for what you want to do. So I told you we have a very large budget, but we also have significant amount of expenses, and we provide a lot of health care. So today, about 2 of every 3 individuals that my health system sees has insurance. And for those individuals, when we provide care, we get some form of reimbursement. 1 in 3, however, does not. Last year, that was over 100,000 unique individuals who came to us for care. And as it turned out, the expenses associated to providing care to those individuals was about $500 million. So a big part of what we're trying to do is to say, how can we find improvements in how we operate as an organization so we can provide care to more people? It's still estimated that there are somewhere between 200 and 300,000 individuals in the county who don't have insurance. And secondly, how can we find more revenue to help deliver on our mission?
So what are some more of the recent issues you have that have come across your desk? Now, of course, we have all these issues of private versus public, and
Right.
having the poor population and the prison population as not problems, but things you have to deal with. But what are some issues that have come across the desk maybe in the past month or two? Any large significant things? It's like the end of the year, so.
Well, the end of this year was an interesting one for us because we had a presidential election. And that presidential election is going to lead, obviously, to President-elect Trump coming into office in January. Also a pretty significant changeover in Congress in Washington, D.C. Now, we are a local safety net system, but like every other public safety net system in the United States, we rely heavily on state support and on federal support. And so when there are changes in the political environment in Springfield or Washington, D.C., those can have an impact for us. The Affordable Care Act that was passed into law in 2010 has been a huge benefit to the individuals that we've historically served because it allowed us to get many more of them, many more services than we'd previously been able to do when they were uninsured. It's also given us some financial stability that has allowed us to make some long overdue investments in our organization. So for instance, a week ago, we had groundbreaking for a new building that we're going to put up on the campus of Stroger Hospital that will allow us to tear down some antiquated buildings where we had been providing health care, but in really pretty out-of-date facilities. And so those challenges of trying to refresh and be able to have modern facilities, both for our patients and for the medical staff, is critically important for us if we want to remain competitive in an environment where most of our patients are insured. Now, if it turns out that the Affordable Care Act is substantially changed with the new leadership team in Washington, that'll be a different challenge for us, and we're waiting to see what those recommendations are going to be.
Now to wrap up, you've been through 3 years of being a CEO, and you've come across a lot of issues so far. So what is the most significant idea you have taken away from all your years of experience in the field of medicine and your time as a CEO?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to understand that we've got to make continual progress as a society to get coverage and access to health care. And, you know, it's a shame. Right now, the country is at the lowest level of people who are uninsured that we've been in during my lifetime. That's the way that it should be. We're the wealthiest country on the planet, probably at the wealthiest time in our history, and yet we have a lot of people who don't have access to basic health care. So that's the challenge for us, I think, at a national and a moral level. It's a challenge for me operating a safety net system in Cook County. I think the advantages that I see is that I see tremendous hope. There's a lot of improvements that we've seen in healthcare. The question is, how do we deliver those to people who are at the lowest end of the social economic ladder? Because I think that that defines us as a society. So I'm very excited to be leading the healthcare system at this time.
Well, thank you, Dr. Shannon, for coming in today. It was certainly an honor to talk to you.
It's been a pleasure.
I'm Anthony Landahl, and see you next time on The A-List.